something we know well in my city of Thompson, Manitoba, northern Manitoba. In rural and northern communities these days, we see how local leadership, partnership, and resilience is shaping the lives of our residents. And that's just not unique in Thompson. It's similar in your communities also. And that's the story of municipalities right across this country right now. And that is just the moment we are in today. The road to success, the road of resilience, and this road of ambition and opportunity is running through our municipalities. It's in that spirit of forward-looking, community-driven leadership that we welcome our next speaker. As the newest leader of the NDP, Avi Lewis does not shy away from looking forward. In fact, you could almost say that taking action is in his blood. Following in the footsteps of his grandfather and father, Avi chose a path of political engagement, becoming a third-generation public figure that just recently became the leader of the New Democrats. Before entering electoral politics, Avi spent decades working in journalism, documentary filmmaking, education, and community organizing. His reporting at CBC and Al Jazeera focused on social, economic, and environmental issues affecting communities across Canada and around the world. His documentary work also examined how people respond to economic change and uncertainty. These experiences have shaped his perspective on issues that municipalities navigate every day, from climate adaptation to economic development to community well-being, and the list goes on. And as municipal leaders continue advocating for stronger collaboration across all orders of government, his background provides additional context for the discussions we are having here this week at this conference. So, it feels fitting that our next speaker is stepping into this room of municipal leaders who are, quite literally, we are building the future every day. And for a national leader making his inaugural annual conference debut, I can't think of you to be a better audience for him. Please join me in welcoming the leader of the New Democratic Party, Avi Lewis.
Good morning, everyone. Wow, my first FCM. This is exciting. New kid at school, yes, indeed. Let's give it up. I'm the new kid at school, about 9 weeks into this big new job. Don't know if you heard. I am delighted to be here with you today. I just want to say off the top, the NDP knows that municipalities, our communities and neighborhoods are where the real work of Canada takes place, and we salute you in doing that work every single day. Les liens entre le NPD et la Fédération canadienne des municipalités sont profonds et remontent à plusieurs décennies. Avant même de devenir chef du parti, Jack Layton a été président de la FCM et s'y est fortement impliqué tout au long de son passage au Conseil municipal de Toronto. Our links between the party and this organization are long-standing, and we are extremely proud to be the party of Jack Layton, who contributed so much in his long career as a councillor and then president of this organization. I remember interviewing Jack when I was a cub reporter at City TV, at City Pulse News in Toronto in the 1990s, and I traced his path and it ran through this organization to the leadership of our party. Municipalities are on the front lines of the multi-crisis that Canadians face: housing and homelessness, the toxic drug supply, the climate emergency, and the high cost of living. Added to those are looming new challenges today. For instance, in Ontario, the government is on the cusp of removing municipal ownership of water infrastructure and instead will hand that water infrastructure over to newly formed water corporations. It is obvious that the intent is to privatize water in Ontario, and this, as we know from countless international examples, is a disaster in the making, especially when provincial governments across the country are looking to take advantage of the federal government's incentives to go all in on data centers. Another hugely divisive debate coming soon to many of your communities if it hasn't already arrived. It's clear that Canadians are deeply concerned and anxious about corporate generative AI, its impact on jobs, on water and electricity, the bubble that it's created on the stock market, and the infrastructure that is rolling out across the land. New polling just this week from Angus Reid shows that 68% of Canadians would oppose a large AI data center being built within a few blocks of their home, and that percentage is even higher in rural areas. The NDP has an alternative vision. Au lieu de prioriser la construction accélérée d'immenses centres de données destinés à l'IA, des projets que la majorité des communautés rejettent, le gouvernement fédéral a la responsabilité de veiller à la modernisation des infrastructures d'eau potable, de transport collectif et de logement. Instead of going all in on AI data centers, the federal government should be stepping up and modernizing water infrastructure, doubling down on funding public transit, and rolling out a massive build-out of non-market housing. These are just some of the struggles that you face in your communities that we believe the federal government should prioritize. At a time when, as the last panel showed, Budget 2026 includes new spending of $81.8 billion over 5 years for defense, there is clearly money to be spent in this country, and we salute the FCM for trying to get some of that money towards critically needed green infrastructure in communities. But it's not just the printing money at the federal level. This country is awash in wealth. The big six banks made $70 billion in profits last year alone. The oil and gas industry is on its way to $90 billion of projected profits, wartime profits, because of this war on Iran this year alone. What we are lacking in this country, obviously in our perspective as New Democrats, is a federal government with the courage and conviction to go and get some of that immense wealth with appropriate taxation, including excess profit taxes and wealth taxes, and properly fund local government and local services across this great land. You know the crunch, the massive need in your communities, and your mandate, and the total lack of resources that you have to face these crises. Where did this mismatch come from? When did we get so far out of whack in Canada between the wealth at the top and the crises at the local level? I remember because I was there. It was February 27th, 1995. Yes, I am talking about the infamous Paul Martin budget to slay the deficit from the early 90s recessions. The finance minister, Paul Martin, at the time, rewrote the social contract in Canada. Now, I remember it because I was covering it, but unfortunately, my memories are a little fuzzy because I was covering it for Much Music. So I spent that historic day in the foyer of the House of Commons with Master T. I don't know if you remember Tony Young, the 6-foot-something VJ, beloved guy with dreadlocks. And we were more focused on fast motion videos of the finance minister's new shoes. And, you know, I think we missed the story. But what happened was that the Fed slashed transfers to the provinces in historic fashion. They stopped building public housing. The Feds pulled back on transit funding, transformed unemployment insurance, yanking the rug out from under millions of workers, and much more. And that started the cascading effects of downloading. All of the great crises of our time landed on your doorstep without the financial capacity to meet them. And that fundamental imbalance has never been remedied, which is why we have $250 billion of local infrastructure deficit, why we have hallway medicine, the crisis of housing and homelessness, and more. And now, it needs to be said in a room like this one, which is leading on this issue, we have the climate emergency lying heavy in our lungs every summer, which we now call smoke season. The washed out roads, the burned down towns, the need for local adaptation measures from air conditioning and heat pumps to flood defense. Once again, the crisis and the solutions are right there at ground level without the resources to deal with them. Because it's the federal government that has those responsibilities and the resources to meet the measure of this historic moment and build a safer, more secure and resilient economy at the local level all over this vast and beautiful land. Thank you. But it is you, municipal leaders, who are leading the way in bold action and solutions to meet those great challenges. And I want to shout out here the incredible group Elbows Up for Climate. For me, thank you and congratulations on your great summit here this week. Elbows Up for Climate is for me an inspiring example of local leadership with national impact, especially in a time when, let's be honest, the federal government is systematically dismantling the entire framework of climate action in this country. And so in closing my brief remarks here before I chat with Kathy, I just want to say, thought experiment. If the Constitution of this country ever happened to open up, like if the constitutional garage door opener malfunctioned and the door just opened and we suddenly had an opportunity to get Canada's garage cleaned up and organized for the first time in decades, we would give municipalities the structural status and powers that you need to deliver the solutions that your communities need, and it would be the greatest spring cleaning this country has ever had. Thank you for having me. Merci tout le monde. And now we will retire to our fireside armchairs.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And I know I said earlier that I'm from Thompson, Manitoba, so I think there's a real hidden reason why that you and I are doing this, because of my premier, Wab Kinew, and we all know he certainly has been a hot topic in Alberta the last couple of weeks. Don't we know that? So,
you know, New Democrats are not always popular, but we speak our mind. You know.
Absolutely. So I think it's great that you're here and we're getting to know you and your priorities. And you spent, as you said, and then when I introduced you, a lot of your career focused on inequality and climate action and social justice. So as the new leader of the NDP, you have a new platform here and a stage to advocate on behalf of Canadians. So when you are traveling now across the country, what are you hearing from communities and in their municipalities about the challenges that people are facing? And where do you see the greatest opportunity for you now for your leadership?
Yeah, Kathy, thank you so much. And it is an incredible opportunity for me to tour the country and talk to gigantic audiences like this one, but also be at ground level. And, you know, the experience of our long 7-month leadership campaign in the NDP was one of crisscrossing this great land and meeting with people at their doorways and kitchen tables in every kind of community. And what I have heard in the last year, this will be no surprise to everyone here, but just the everyday emergency of just trying to get by in this economy is the #1 crisis that Canadians face. And it is surreal to be in a country where there is so much wealth and people cannot pay for groceries. And, you know, I was door knocking in Winnipeg. Recently, I spoke to the CLC, the Canadian Labour Congress Convention. Of course, wherever we would go, we get out and pound on doors because that's what we love to do. And I knocked on this one door, and we were going around with a petition on surveillance pricing, which is one of our early initiatives. This is a creepy new practice where big tech and big retail are teaming up to mine our personal data, go through our browser history, algorithms even reading our emails, and charging individualized prices for people, jacking up prices to whatever people think they can afford. So like if you're a new couple with a baby and you're Googling baby has a fever, right? You might go to a shopping website to buy a thermometer. That price could be elevated way beyond what someone else would see because they know that you're desperate. This is a creepy, unfair, undemocratic, un-Canadian practice. We think it ought to be banned. In Manitoba, the provincial government has already moved to ban it. So we're going around with this petition in Winnipeg, ban surveillance pricing. I knock on this door, and a young mom comes out, 2 super cute kids kind of poking out from behind her. And I start talking to her about this thing, and she says, yeah, I mean, I just don't know what happened. But like, I lost my partner to homicide some years ago. I'm a single mom now, and sometime in the last few years, I can't make it work. Like my week of groceries used to be $150. Now it's almost $300. And I almost felt bad kind of asking her to sign a petition about this big tech thing, even more bad news. But when I explained it to her, she grabbed the clipboard out of my hand and she signed it like she was scrawling it on on a bust of Galen Weston's forehead. You know, it was like, she's so angry at the grocery billionaires, the 5 corporations that control 80% of the grocery market, who are jacking up prices on Canadians. And that's why we've been calling for a public option for groceries. The market is failing to provide the basics that people need in their daily lives at a price that they can afford on the salaries that we make. And that is the fundamental crisis, along with all the other things, the threat from the US and the coming out of the pandemic and the world that has gone bonkers. It's the everyday emergency that we're really focused on, and proposing concrete solutions that will actually work, where the government steps up and governs at the federal level to give local governments the tools and the context where people can get by.
That's true. Yesterday, we actually heard that because we have quite a representation here from northern, rural, and the remote territories, and they talked about the cost. So thank you for addressing that. And so we talk about affordability. Us municipal leaders, we're broke also because we have challenges. We are ready to build, and we have our own things we own, and we own 60% of the public infrastructure, and we're broke. So we're the first to respond to the homelessness in our communities as the order of government closest to the ground. That's us. And we are also focused on advancing climate resilience and on increasing this housing supply to help homelessness. So what role do you believe municipalities and us as the leaders should play in shaping Canada's future on key municipal priorities like infrastructure that we own 60% of, and economic resilience? And how should the federal government work differently with local governments to deliver the results for Canadians and for our Canadian municipalities?
This is it. I mean, this is a big question, and it's not just facing municipalities and local government. It is facing Canada. And look, we live in a time when people want to do big things in this country, and we're under attack from our closest neighbor. And I think that there are opportunities there. But the missing link has been, and this is why I talked about it in my brief remarks, stable, predictable, consistent funding from the federal government, which is the level of government that has the financial resources directly to the local communities where you know the solutions that you need. You know where the housing needs to go. You know how the transit needs to work. You know where the food deserts are, that if we want a public option for groceries and we actually had nonprofit grocery stores that could slash the price of food by 30 to 45%, and that 45% is in the northern and remote communities, local government knows where that infrastructure lives and where it needs to be fixed, where it needs to be expanded, missing the fundamental key to it all, which is the federal resources. It was Jack Layton who proposed and won 1 cent of the gas tax, the federal gas tax, to flow to municipalities for transit funding and other local priorities. But it has to be stable and it has to be long-term. And the government of Canada, I think right now, is distracted by a lot of shiny objects, major projects, getting shovels in the ground, the AI rollout and the rest of it, and maybe missing the fundamentals where the wealth of this country has to be put behind the local governments and the local crises in community.
Thank you. And when you address about the housing and we talk about the homelessness, I mean, housing is a hot topic also these days, and we see this in our municipalities that homelessness is increasing. And the latest stats are that it's increased by 20% in this last decade, and it's a problem. And as municipal leaders, it's one of our most challenging issues facing the municipalities that we represent every day in Canada. And we're working hard to ensure no one's left behind. Every order of government has a role to play in helping this out. So what do you think needs to be done to address this homelessness crisis in our communities? And how should all the orders of government work together so that we ensure no one is left behind?
Yeah, this is really, it's upsetting for Canadians. It's visible what's happening in our communities. And, you know, I think the problem is that we know what the solutions are. And I think at the local level, the housing first approach, the fact that we need supportive housing, and the fact fundamentally that we need non-market housing is just glaringly evident to everybody. But it is not a priority at this moment in this country, and it ought to be. It is the visible crisis that's unfolding on our streets. We have, 3.5% of our housing stock is non-market housing. Even the OECD average of 7%, double what we have, we think it should be higher. And we proposed, my leadership campaign proposed in the process of, in the course of the election, leadership election, a housing secretariat in Canada that would operate like the major projects office, but for housing. A one-stop clearinghouse that actually resolves the bottlenecks and funnels the money fast and directly to the non-market housing we need. Unfortunately, we believe that the Liberal government has sort of one version of how we do big things in Canada, which is to pour a few billion public dollars into a pot to catalyze, one of the Prime Minister's favorite words, this landslide of private capital that's supposed to come off the sidelines and fund everything. And from the National Infrastructure Bank to the housing strategy that Carney announced and is already, according to the parliamentary budget officer, only going to create maybe half of the housing promised, this model is broken. We have significant public resources in Canada. They must be put to work directly in a massive build-out of non-market housing, of supportive housing, which is what homeless folks need, of cooperative and non-profit housing, of all of the kinds of housing that are not real estate speculation, but are actually putting people in homes with the supports that they need. We know how to do it. We just don't have them. You know how to do it. The money just isn't there, but the money's there for other things. So it's a question of a national conversation to shift that laser focus of our government onto the everyday crisis of people sleeping on our streets and people being scared when they leave their kid at the bus stop. The solutions are there, but we need the federal government to get on the game.
Thank you. You know, when we talk about housing, I think it's important we have to remember that housing means different things for different municipalities. There's senior housing, there's affordable housing, there's transitional housing, that there's definitely different streams of housing. So there's more to it.
Rent geared to income housing, you know, that went the way in Paul Martin's 95 budget. We need it back desperately.
And if we're going to build these homes, we need to have some infrastructure to support it. So we definitely need to have some water and wastewater funding. Many people in this room, and who you're going to see over these next few days here, we are practical problem solvers, and we're focused on getting these projects built and improving the daily life in the municipalities that we represent. What gives you optimism about Canada right now? And where do you see opportunities for people from different political perspectives and orders of government to work together?
Yeah, I mean, working together across our differences is really the culture that I'm trying to build in the NDP, because I have positions on things like fossil fuel expansion that some of our provincial sections don't agree with. Here in Alberta, that's been a debate, a healthy, I believe, democratic debate within our party. But we agree on so much in our party and as Canadians. And at the moment, we agree that we doubled down for decades on free trade with the United States. I mean, we were always against that in the NDP because we said, how can we get that deeply integrated with an economy 10 times our size? What if they roll over one day? Well, they're rolling over on us now, and there's no joy in being right about that, but we recognize that we are under common threat. And Canadians have come together in really inspiring ways. There is a deep appetite to do big things in this country. We just think that there could be an emphasis on like non-export industries. The economy of care, where 3.5 million Canadians work, 75% women, education, healthcare, long-term care, childcare. These are the essential social services that bind our communities together, the connective tissue of our society. That's a nation-building project. Housing and public transit and climate response, from firefighting to a heat pump in every home to an east-west-north electricity grid so we can trade clean electricity between provinces across this country instead of fossil fuels. These are the solutions that are not about shipping raw resources elsewhere, but about directly addressing the crises in communities. Canadians are up for doing big things. We just got to do the right ones. And I have faith in us that we're going to choose.
Thank you very much for your message this morning, Avi.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Kathy. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thank you so much to Avi Lewis for joining us here today, and to Kathy Valentino for her excellent moderating skills. It is great to get the NDP perspective this morning and also have a chance to welcome their new leader to FCM as he outlines his priorities. We have one more agenda item to share with you, and we think it's a pretty important one. Everyone in